Hi, this is Kelsey Bremer, and this is my Legal Aspects of Teacher Evaluation presentation. The first article, Teacher Evaluation and Issue Overview, explained the evolution of teacher evaluation procedures that were once obscure policies and have now become prominent practice in most schools, based on test results that showed a discrepancy among student growth by teachers. The need for stronger evaluation systems became apparent. Some teachers were showing over a year's worth of student growth within a school year, while other teachers were showing less than a year's worth of growth with their students. The race to the top competition was a federal grant awarded to districts for making policy changes that included 3 levels of performance and also attached student achievement scores to teacher evaluations. This led to policies ultimately that changed the tenure status of teachers, their pay, and the procedures for dismissal, as well as being placed on a plan, an improvement plan in the district for unsatisfactory performance. Eventually, the evaluation system moved to observing standards through a checklist used during informal observations. The Danielson framework is probably the most common framework used that assesses each standard while an administrator observes in the classroom. Throughout time, less emphasis has been placed on student achievement and more of what is witnessed in the classroom. Some concerns stated in this article were that teachers who did not necessarily teach students in their classroom were being judged based on those students' performances. An example would be a content-specific teacher whose content is not assessed in a state assessment is held accountable for scores that students who are not in their class receive. Also, heavy caseloads of special needs students or otherwise challenging students that would result in lower test scores could prevent teachers from wanting to have those students in their classes. And there was also a concern that many teachers would begin teaching to the test or spending their content time doing test prep to achieve the higher test scores, which isn't necessarily quality instruction. The next article, Teacher Evaluation Heads to the Courts, was an overview of several court cases in different states across the United States that were all based on teacher evaluation legal issues. Florida had several that were due to the school-wide growth formula, again, teachers being evaluated on students that are not their own students, as well as merit pay provisions that conflicted with the collective bargaining rights that teachers have based on their negotiated agreement. The Louisiana case was based on teacher tenure and pay scales being based on teacher evaluations. The Nevada case involved actually several teachers being dismissed based on unsatisfactory ratings without a due process hearing. And this is the case that I look at closer a little bit later in the presentation. New Mexico had several cases that were related to inaccurate teacher ratings that were based on flawed or incomplete data, as well as some situations with the state overstepping control on the teacher evaluation requirements at the district level. New York had multiple cases, and they were based on not taking poverty into account and how that affects student achievement, as well as some discrepancies between a teacher being rated as effective one evaluation cycle and then ineffective the next, and how this was not a reliable evaluation system. Tennessee's cases were all based on student test scores not adequately reflecting teacher performance. And then a Texas case focused on what the standard for adequate student growth would be to determine if a teacher was effective. having vague evaluation systems in place that teachers weren't well trained in, and then the effect that having ELL students in the classroom would have on the test scores that were attached to a teacher's performance. The third article, Teacher Evaluation, explained that Every Student Succeeds Act, which ended the federal involvement in the teacher evaluation process, and it no longer required states to attach test scores as a significant component in teacher evaluations. It allowed states to redesign their own teacher accountability systems and put supports in place that included multiple measures of performance. It prohibited the Secretary of Education from prescribing or defining teacher effectiveness at the district level. And it explained the Title II ESSA savings clause as a rights serving and not rights creating clause. So this doesn't create a new protection for teachers, but protects against any interference in existing rights based on state and local law, as well as a district's negotiated agreement. And then finally, this act promoted a partnership approach with teachers to provide meaningful feedback to the teachers that promoted growth, adequate training for administrators and teachers, and protected the rights such as due process and collective bargaining. So in my district, we use the McCrell evaluation system. Classroom teachers complete annual self-evaluations using a rubric, and then they set a goal for the year based on that self-evaluation. And throughout the year, during mid-year and end-of-year goal conferences with administration, they must show growth through evidence and their formal observations that they are reaching that goal. Administrators use a McCrell evaluation rubric to evaluate teachers during formal observations. Teachers in the district are on a 3-year cycle. So in their first year, they receive three formal observations per semester. Their second year, they get 1 formal observation per semester. And their third year, there are no formal observations, although they do still set a goal. And they, when they're being formally observed, they complete a pre-observation conference, the observation, and a post-observation conference. Throughout the year, the teacher must also add artifacts as evidence for meeting any standards that the administrator has not observed in their formal observations, and they are marked as developing, proficient, accomplished, or distinguished for each component of the standards that are addressed in the rubric. So the teacher recourse in my district, the teachers have the opportunity to discuss their evaluation scores with the administrator during their post-observation conference. And at this time, they can defend their instructional practice with evidence or artifacts that they can upload to their file that support the standards in question. If the administrator agrees at that time that the standard has been adequately met, the score can be changed. Any disagreements beyond this should be taken to the superintendent, and after that, the Board of Education would be involved. And then teachers have access to the negotiated agreement in which the evaluation procedures are explicitly stated. It's also important to know that teachers are asked to sign their completed evaluation after each cycle. And so if there is a dispute, it's important not to sign that document until it has been settled. So I looked up the Nevada legal case that was mentioned in the reading material. It involved 15 former district employees and their local union rep, and they filed a suit against their district in Clark County, Nevada. All 15 of the teachers were post-probationary teachers, and they each had received 2 consecutive unsatisfactory evaluations. This caused them to lose their post-probationary status and return to probationary status, which meant that they could be terminated without due process when they received their 3rd unsatisfactory evaluation. The courts ruled in favor of the teachers, and although they should have been adequately informed through the recent passing of a state bill receiving their second unsatisfactory evaluation and the notice of intent that they signed that was marked probationary, the district did not inform the teachers of procedures that allowed them to dispute the evaluations prior to losing their post-probationary status. They had a right to have other administrators evaluate them prior to being dismissed or going to probationary status. So the courts found in favor of the teachers and ordered the district to reinstate the teachers as post-probationary with back pay and benefits. So as a future leader, one of my major goals is to provide feedback that promotes personal reflection and growth through goal setting. Our current evaluation system does require a self-assessment each year and for teachers to set their own goal based on their scores. However, as a future leader, I think that it's important that I help teachers set meaningful goals that ultimately improve instruction, and I don't believe that that's occurring at this point. Our current evaluation system also requires administrators to use a rubric as a type of checklist when observing, to mark off standards that are observed. And simply sharing this information with teachers typically does not provide it in a meaningful way that tells teachers how they can continue to improve. So as a future leader, I want to get more out of the post-conference that I have with teachers so that they can leave with a goal in mind and steps that they can take toward improvement. I think that with my instructional coaching background, this is just a path that I feel comfortable. It's a conversation type setting with teachers where you just use dialogue and questioning to get them to really reflect and determine where they need to grow. And oftentimes, as a teacher, I leave my conference, my post-observation conference, seeking more feedback and wanting to know how I can continue to grow. So this is an area that I would like to improve in my building when I get the chance. Thanks.